Yeah, once again, good morning to everyone. We sincerely appreciate your time, especially today, given this bizarre times of COVID-19. We can guarantee you one thing, especially those who have some questions in mind about ODCs or GCCs, you will definitely have something to take away from the session, or at least post the session, you could get that clarified with us. Thank you. So let's dive into the presentation right away. All right. We all know we are, I'm sure we are all fed up of hearing this term new normal by now. And whenever such an abnormal crisis occurs, obviously we'll have to embrace this new normal at one stage or the other. And do we have a choice? We don't, do we? So both in the personal life as well as professional life, yes, we've hit this new normal now, and we are embracing it at the moment, I would say. Speaking of that, thinking about the topic for today, so why have we chosen this topic, Global Capability Center, and especially why again today? Because we should agree that it's not something new to all of us, right? We all know this, and it's been around for about 3 decades now. So nothing new about it as a concept. And let me make one thing clear. This webinar does not purport to sell GCC as a concept, whereas we just wanted to remind and just reinstate on the fact that, especially given today's situation, offshore work definitely seems to be a solution. Yeah, so looking at three different perspectives that we thought about. Number one, working from home, right? Regardless of the industry verticals, now we see most of the world working from home. I mean, not just IT people, right? Even schools are working from home, even media people are working from home. They have something to do, and thanks to the technology for that. So, so while we all work from home, what big difference does it make in an entity's perspective to get work done from home or work done from an offshore center? The only difference we see is that the offshore work crosses the country border. That's it. Which means now, especially when crossing the country border, the only fear in their mind could be on data security. So we have technology today grown to a stage where we can adhere to all security and other compliance factors as well, which means this fear can be taken away from their mind. And the ODC and offshore work definitely could be a solution for today's crisis. And coming to the second point, obviously business continuity is every entity what they want to ensure today. Some of them are completely lucky, like, without any impact, they're able to continue business, and some aren't. So at least to a certain extent, entities, maybe even if their frontline products aren't selling like before COVID-19, they still would love to have that kind of support from their employees, but at the same time at a lower cost. I'm sure, it's not completely possible without introducing at least some amount of offshore work into the picture. And then coming to various tiers of entities, right? Across all tiers of entities, we can definitely tell you, given the various sizes and phases and models of ODCs and GCCs, all these tiers of entities do have a suitable model to subscribe to. So these are the reasons why we've chosen this topic for today. And now coming to us, right? So why do we consider ourselves as an appropriate host for this topic? Very simple, as simple as we have hands-on experience operating various sizes, phases, and models of GCCs, definitely over a decade now. So we were confident enough to say, yes, we are one of those appropriate hosts for this topic today. Now, getting into the agenda, I'll continue speaking on how ODC evolves into a GCC, and also I'll touch base on some of those interesting personas of GCCs, and definitely statistically talk about preferable destinations for GCCs and the market trend for today. I will then hand over to Kumar, our GCC practice head, to dive into ODC and their models. And obviously, given the fact that security is of a critical topic for today, given this GCC, we will hand it over to Vinith, our IMS practice head, to touch base on infra and compliance standards that every ODC or GCC should adhere to. And last but definitely not the least, we have our esteemed guest for this morning, Ravi Shankar, the head of software and IT services from the Collinsons Group, to shed his insights, to shed some light on the criteria they considered while they pinned down their appropriate partner for ODC, and also on some of the actions that entities could take for them to get rid of the fear on offshore work. So all these topics he would definitely shed some light on, and let's move on to the presentation now. Okay, looking at ODC to GCC evolution, right? Any entity, regardless of their size, definitely they would want to try out the concept to begin with. So they originally start off setting up a smaller proof of concept kind of setup, which means they would only take 1 or 2 functions for the pilot phase. And hence the services also they would choose as if they're some of those shared services like back office services kind of scope of work. And hence the key stakeholders involved would be just 1 or 2 heads of those functions that they've chosen. So this would be the initial setup for any entity. And once they are confident that, yes, this concept is proven, and then they would move on to setting up a bigger captive unit, so which is nothing but a ramped up model of this original setup. So it's merely based on size, I would say. So in terms of value delivered also, initially it was 1 or 2 functions. Now it has grown into like few more functions. That's what would happen. And just because the number of functions or verticals have increased, now they should look at some integration between these verticals to ensure success of these captive units. And hence now the key stakeholders also, the number of key stakeholders has grown into few more functional heads, especially across the globe, across the regions, especially for MNCs. And the pure objective of these captive units has also grown to prove the cost arbitrage and also improve on the delivery side. So these two are the basic units that anyone would set up and grow into until they realize ROI. So once they efficiently start realizing ROIs, they would then think of, obviously subject to their capability, they would think, and capacity, they would think of establishing a smaller version of GCC called the Global In-House Center. So this would mean now they want to expand, right? So it's not merely about the services, it's also about the value add. So they think on the business impact kind of perspective as well. So now they want to produce products on their own, product IPs. And hence what happens, apart from the verticals or the functions they run, they also need some horizontals as in terms of supporting services, like support services like PMO or HR functions or, accounts and finance on their own. Hence, the organization by itself becomes it takes a matrix shape. So the verticals, just because they're looking at business impact perspective also, not just on delivery, so they have to set up their own center of excellences, and hence subject matter experts also come into picture. Now, obviously the stakeholders also would increase from just the functional heads into some business heads. And as I was comparing between the initial setup and the captive unit, similarly, GCCs are nothing but just an elaborated version of GICs. So the final stage is GCC, where it's merely grown in size in terms of size from a global in-house center, and hence this entity now needs a management committee and a board by itself. Hence the CEO comes into picture, and they start operating in a full-fledged way, producing products on their own and IPs on their own. So this is how it evolves. And now taking a bird's eye view on this evolution, right? Looking at it in the entity's perspective, So there are various tiers of entities. Usually tier 1 and tier 2 entities, would have GCCs as their ultimate objective, and hence they would, although they start off with the offshore setup initially, some of them might afford to do it themselves on their own, provided they're really confident about risk mitigation and all that. They've clearly set out the risk mitigation strategies and all that. If not, even tier 1 and tier 2 entities usually go with partners like us. And similarly for tier 3 and SMEs, they do not even have GCCs as their ultimate objective, not even in the long run. So they would only do the startup and ramp up to a captive unit. Hence, they usually go with partners like us. So that's the idea of how ODC evolves into GCC. And let's get on to some of these interesting personas. So to begin with, I'll talk about digital innovation. Yes, now that the concept of GCC has evolved over 3 decades now, obviously on the technology side also they've evolved. And now people need skill sets for the new age technologies like AI, ML, and cloud, IoT, RPA, etc. Right? Hence, the digital skills persona comes hand in hand with this. So obviously GCCs will have to adapt to a hybrid approach to either reskill or acquire talent with niche skills. So that is one other interesting persona. And coming to the infrastructure side, obviously given all this, even the infrastructure has to grow from its traditional model to a hyper-converged infrastructure model, which is what Vinith would touch base on slightly later. Now coming to 2 other interesting aspects of GCC, right? One is the partnerships that these GCCs would want to hold with startups, especially in case of skill sets that aren't present in their own GCC. I would say our own entity, it's a classic example of a GCC ourselves, although our journey has been the other way around. So our headquarters based in India acts as a typical GCC for all our regional offices across the globe. So there, for example, we do not have a full-fledged center of excellence for blockchain at the moment, whereas we do have center of excellence for other new age technologies. So what we would do in case we receive a new opportunity along the lines of blockchain, we would obviously want to go and partner up with another entity or a startup who is, who are well established with blockchain as a technology itself. Like, they should have enough skill sets in it. Then we could probably look at various models to partner up with them. Probably we could just go with them on a joint go-to-market perspective, or even we could, co-innovate with them, or we could probably invest in their equity, or we could even decide to acquire them, depending on the needs. So this is one other interesting persona. And another thing which is specifically suitable for, once again, for our entity as well, I would touch base on is these universities and university engagements. Yes, GCCs, especially when they want to do their researches, they go and leverage on this, GCCs actively leverage the university ecosystem through multiple channels. We could have a say in their training and curriculum design itself, or we could probably invest in building a research center within the university, and we could work along with them, on that. While I was saying, our entity being a part of a bigger KG group, our KG group has its own educational institutions, and hence we have the luxury of leveraging the university's ecosystem from our own group. So that's one other interesting persona. So now moving on to, the ultimate topic of, preferred locations. Especially India is once again considered as a preferred location, and its emerging cities per se, for GCCs and ODCs. As you can see, look, India continues to be the preferred destination for GCC setups. And statistics do tell us there are over 1,750 plus GCCs already established in India over a span of 4 years, over a span of 3 decades now. And if you look at the skill sets, it's almost close to 1 million now. And so in the bar chart, what we are seeing is the gradual growth of the number of GCCs established in India as it's a preferred destination over a couple of decades. That's what we can see here. So moving on to how these number of GCCs distributes across those MNCs or entities located across the globe. So definitely from the Americas region, we've got the highest number of GCCs established in India. And then comes the Europe and Middle East and African region. And next is the APAC region. Obviously, the number of entities who have set up their GCCs in India from the APAC region seems to be low for obvious reasons, like, there are competitive regions across the APAC region for GCC hosting itself. However, point to be noted is India still continues to be the preferred destination, not only because of the abundance of skill sets, but also the quality of the skill sets we have and the diversity, the variety of skill sets across new age technologies that we have in India. Yeah. Now that we are done with these topics, I would like to hand over to Kumar to deep dive into ODCs and their models. Over to you, Kumar.
Yeah, thank you, Amriya. Thanks for giving a detailed insight about GCC. So I'm going to talk about Offshore Development Center, which would be the first step to reach any GCC maturity model. Usually, IT companies help their customers to establish as well as manage offshore center so that required companies can gain access to the world-class technology. Generally, Offshore Development Center is a software development center which will be located in a country with a deep talent pool and which has cost-effective resources and offering software development service for companies located in other part of the world. Any organization who want to start the ODC engagement based on their management vision and requirements, they can decide how they want to build it. It can be a build, operate, manage model, or it can be a build, operate, transfer model. So, and within that also there is something called shared and dedicated one. So I will explain in little bit detail about shared and dedicated in later of this presentation. So build, operate, transfer model, it will be starting with shared models or dedicated model, and it can continue like that. But if you want to go for build, operate, transfer one, and definitely the maturity level, it will lead it to the dedicated model alone. So now I'm going to talk in detail about the engagement models available for ODC. So these are the most popular or most used engagement models for any ODC. First, I would like to talk about the master service provider model. In this model, companies who require the ODC services will definitely identify a master service provider who has variety of skill set and capabilities to serve their needs. Most of the companies begin their ODC journey with this model. This model will reduce the administrative overhead and also gives better leverage for the companies to negotiate on the cost. Mostly it will be done like staffing model where IT associates will be onboarded based on the requirements. So that is master service provider model. Next is like hire, train and deploy. This model is used when a company required a specific skill set which may be hard to find in the market, so that companies can recruit with the basic skill set and they will train and they will deploy in the production. So this is not only for specific skill set, and if you want any specific knowledge required for associate to work in the project, this model will be suitable for that. This is also similar to staffing model, but the value addition is given in the form of training and upskilling. So basically we'll identify resource and required training will be given before deploying them in the production. So if anyone requires this kind of skill set, they can go for train, hire, deploy model. Next one is the pyramid model. This model works out for a large project where companies need more number of consultants working on a particular project, where it requires wide spectrum of skill sets for that particular project. In this model, IT companies will maintain the team based on the required structure. This model is also best suitable for maintenance project. And if you have any very big project and it's a long running project and you need to maintain, this will be the ideal model, where the team structure to be maintained within the specific conditions. So this can be done as a staffing or a managed service one. So staffing is like purely so IT consultants or associates will be onboarded for this one, and delivery like it's not delivery will be handled by the client itself. But if it's a managed service, then the delivery will be managed by or responsibility of the delivery lies with the IT companies. So next time I'm going to talk about the build, operate, transfer model. The previous three models are most relevant to build, operate, manage, where IT companies will build the required team and maintain the team. In the build, operate, transfer model, engagement starts clearly stating that team needs to be built based on the expectations and it will be managed for a certain span of time, and then operation will be transferred to the companies who asked for the service. This is the model to be followed if any organization is looking to evolve their ODC model into GCC level. This can be started with staffing, then step by step, the maturity will move on to the managed service. Then from there, it can be converted into GCC. So this is the different type of engagement models we have for ODC. Next, I'm going to talk about the operation models. As I said, there are two type of models we can start. One is shared model, another one is dedicated model. Majorly, there are two things we need to consider when we say this operation. One is the associates or consultants working for a project. Next is the infrastructure. It may be IT infrastructure or a non-IT infrastructure. Here in this slide, I'm talking about the resources. So anyone who want to have the shared model, want to use the shared model, is it best suitable for L1, L2 kind of activities or any BAU kind of activities where we don't require much technical skill set, only basic knowledge is enough, and again, and people may not having full time of work or they may not be occupied fully in a particular kind of work. So those kind of things can be done in the shared model. In the shared model, starting from physical infrastructure to administration, everything will be shared one. Like one project manager will be handling multiple projects. So with a certain set of resources shared between the multiple projects. That is the shared model. The next one is dedicated model. So here resource will be assigned dedicatedly for the respective project. This is mostly suitable for any project or product development, or if you want to develop any IP solutions, this is the best one. So any activities other than BAU, which requires more technical and functional knowledge, then we need to go for the dedicated model. They can have a dedicated workplace where only the respective project teams will have access to the location. Even the entire network setup can be a separated or dedicated one for this project. So this is the insight about the operation models. Next time moving to the cost model. When it comes to the cost models, most popular model is time and material, where billing will be done based on the time spent or material used for that project. In IT companies, mostly it will be based on the number of associates working for that project. In this model, companies have advantage of utilizing the associates, so they have full control over the consultants or associates working for that project. They may use them for more than one project or more than one requirement as well. Here, IT companies have only limited control over the project management part, and it is mostly the customer will control the project. So this is the time and material. It's more like staffing kind of thing, which will be done from the offshore center. So next is like turnkey model. This is like fixed bid kind of thing, where there will be a fixed set of requirements will be given, and for that fixed cost will be quoted. And project management or resource identification, delivery, everything responsibility lies with the IT companies. Here, customer have very less control over the resource or even over project management. They have very less control. But this is the fixed cost model. So these are the two most popular cost methods followed in the ODC. So with this, I am coming to end on the ODC models. I have an interesting fact about how Indian cities have observed the GCCs, and there are emerging cities as well. So if you see in this presentation, the dark blue cities, the cities marked in dark blue, are the existing cities where the GCCs were set up. In that, if you see the Bangalore, which takes the major portion of it, like 34% of GCCs are located in Bangalore, and we also have other regions as well. The interesting fact is like about the emerging cities. As we all know, the existing IT hubs or major cities are fully occupied or it is fully utilized. Now, there are a lot of research going on to identify the emerging cities. In that, from India, they have identified around 8 cities, in which like 4 on the northern part of the country and 4 on the southern part of the country. So mainly, we like to concentrate on the Coimbatore one, where we are located and where enough infrastructure is there. And anybody wants to start a ODC or GCC, then this will be a preferred one. So with this, I am finishing my ODC related presentation. Next, I am handing over the presentation to my colleague, Mr. Vineet, who can talk about the other important aspect related to ODC or GCC. Yes,
Thanks,
Vineet.
Kumar. Yeah. Thanks, Kumar. Thanks, Amaniyar. Nice to get connected to you through virtual office. If I was in Singapore, I would have said hi to you, or Kumar. We cross each other every day. So this has made us to work away from office, and the technology is helping us to great extent. I hope you guys are able to hear me. So when we talk about the infrastructure, which plays an important role for GCC or ODCs, there's a lot of advantages that needs to be considered when the location has been chosen. And I saw a couple of slides where Kumar was talking about GCC, why GCC in India. And one of the advantages India as a country has for GCC setup is connectivity. The connectivity of under-ocean cables that's been connected across the globe are on a multiple ring kind of a topology where the uptime for the country is like about 99.99999%, something like that. This kind of a technology was not available about a decade back, and being a growing developing country, the service providers, especially Singtel and many other service providers, have laid under-ocean cables, which gives easy connectivity to the rest of the world. Next, we were just talking about shared and dedicated. I'll cover on that, and advantages of Indian cities, where emerging cities, that 8 cities that Kumar was saying, it also has an important role on the available infrastructure that's been laid for industries to look into these cities and take the advantage of whatever has been laid as an infrastructure for operating from the remote. Coming back into work from home, where I think today the entire world, there have been organizations which had a partial work from home, and at least 60%, 75%, 80% were working out of office. Today with the COVID situation, this has become mandatory that people work out of home and the technology supports them. Schools have gone online. Developing countries have started running the schools online, which is a good sign that the technology, the infrastructure that we have built across the globe is supporting even work from home, which we never experimented until we really felt the heat of need that is required. So when we talk about work from home, it's a mindset, it is a comfortability, and the third thing is it's the scare that we had about the data security. So data security plays an important role when we let people work from home. And with today's technology that we have in place, it is like they are actually working physically in the office. The data is so secure that the data cannot be moved out, cannot be moved into any of the drives, cannot be even copied into a Word document or a notepad. There's been a lot of technology that has got evolved much before than COVID. We have to thank cloud technologies that got evolved about 6 to 8 years back, and today it has got matured in such a way that with cloud, with all the security features that is available, with the OpEx model, it is getting more and more feasible that the data security products are available, which helps to maintain high data risk to be secured, like how it is there in a land. So that gives the big advantages of working from home. And the points that needs to be considered when you work from home is the first thing is the connectivity. Obviously, India being the one of the growing telecom industry with new technologies coming in place, the country by itself has capability of providing huge bandwidth on a wireless directly into the home. If it is a terrestrial cable, you get disconnected and you have a lot of challenges of, I've been using dial-ups when I started my career, and it goes through a modem and, we get connected to it. But now it's like I have wireless even in my pocket, and, my YouTube streams when, I'm in the car too. So it has come to that kind of technology, and India by itself has built such a big capability on that. So work from home, two things. One is technology that we have infrastructure, basically how it gets connected, and do we have a proper connection? Yeah, we have amazing connection. And what is the backbone plane that we have? We have huge tons and tons of backbone plane because we just developed our infrastructure across the country for the latest generation of data. Even a couple of service providers have now moved their data to be on an IP based, not on a traditional TDM based of network. Next, when we talk about risk and safety, location assessments, I'll get into location assessment. There are two types that Kumar said. One is a shared and the other one is a dedicated. When we talk about the shared has an advantage and disadvantages and disadvantage. Dedicated has a share, both advantage and disadvantage. When we talk about the shared, a shared ODC is nothing but a space that is being hired, and all the technologies, all the workspace, everything has been provided, and the ODC supplier just needs to get into the seat charges. Dedicated is like a dedicated space where the ODC supplier builds their own network, get connect and ensure that they have a site-to-site tunnels. Site-to-site tunnel again gets into a challenge that we had about 3-4 years back. What will happen if one service provider goes down? What will happen to the other service provider? And how the calls are, how the network has a network traffic can be routed. All those things are next challenges that that were there about 5 years back. Now with AppNet coming in, if somebody is going to choose, if I've been given an opportunity to choose an ODC and being in the infrastructure, I would ask the first question is like, how do you provide 99.9% uptime on the network? So with AppNet coming into place, ODC suppliers have now started buying a full block of IPs, owning those IPs, and giving that to the multiple service providers, multiple internet service providers. By doing that, irrespective of any network, any service provider going down, the other one would work without even a single second downtime. We were using BGPs earlier, but BGPs on VPN tunnels have been a challenge in the past. But now we have just come out of a BGP kind of a technology and started buying, we means the industry, started buying AppNet blocks and owning the block and distributing across the service providers. So as I said, if I've been given an opportunity to assess or find an ODC, my first question will be, how is your power supply? Number two is, how is your connectivity? Third is it a terrestrial or is it on the air? And if it is on the terrestrial, what kind of topology in which the service providers are coming into the terrestrial building? And when we talk about that again, I would check whether it is coming on a ring topology or it is coming in one way, because India is developing and road constructions are going heavier. There's a lot of digging of roads happening. So if it is a ring topology, if something is happening on my right hand, the left hand, the traffic comes through. And today all service providers have identified if they need to survive in an industry, they need to bring ring topology into the buildings that are doing ODC kind of a business. So that gives an important factor to be considered when choosing an ODC. Power is again like the power has to be balanced by the government power as well as in-house power generators, and what is the kind of diesel, the fuel reservative that is being stored. So this plays an important role because the balancing of power always gives big advantage of not depending on the government power. Two, in case of a failure in the government power, there have been incidents where the power generator, is a private power generator, doesn't switch on because it was never used. So I would ask a ODZ supplier, how frequently do you balance the power between the government generator and your in-house power? And a person who does it like 50 to 60%, that is a reliable place really that you need to consider. And premises security that we've been talking, how today, like earlier it was like having one CCTV camera and trying to store that of GBs and GBs of data and trying to find data. It was always a challenge earlier. Now it's like everybody even has a kind of a CCTV even in cars. So I saw cars in Singapore having a camera and proving that they didn't make a wreck, and it was basically the opposite guy made the wreck, and they're able to claim the insurance. So that's come to that level, and that is actually given an advantage of having more secure premises. And when we talk about people who are entering in and going out, earlier it was like more of a pen and paper, and there's no control. Today you see like everybody has an automated system, access control system. These are the technologies that needs to be considered when we really talk about the security. So one is the physical security of the ODC. Two, that is if the ODC is operating in on-prem, and the data security. Data security is again divided into, if it is dedicated, it's a different type of a technology. If it is shared, it's a different type of technology. In dedicated, the investment is going to be a little bit high because the entire infrastructure has to be dedicated for one business. If it is shared, the investment is less, but you're dependent on the shared provider, and the risk is there because if the provider doesn't properly patch, if the provider have not done a proper pen test, all those risks would come on the head. In shared, the cost of operating is much lesser because you don't require a dedicated resource to maintain your IT infrastructure. However, if it is a dedicated, you really need good engineers to maintain, and the cost of operating is going to go high. So this is kind of a comparison. And we again, Kumar touched based about Indian cities. Basically, if you see the diagram of if you see the map, the emerging cities are all places which have quick connection on the terrestrial to the oceans or seas, basically Arabian Sea or Bay of Bengal. So this gives the advantage of non-latency of data getting pushed out of the country to any destination across the globe. I think by this, I've given a picture like what is that needs to be considered on the IT infrastructure if ODC is being chosen. Thanks, Aminia. Thanks, Kumar.
Thank you, Vinith. Thank you so much for your insightful speech. And yeah, here we have Ravi from the Collisons Group, heading software and IT services especially for the FSR domain. So welcome, Ravi. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Amanya.
Hi, Ravi. Hi, Ravi. Thank you. So good to have you as part of this webinar. So let me. Sure, thank you. Let me dive right into the questions, considering time, right? So. So the first one, right? So what was your criteria when you were evaluating and when you wanted to pin down the appropriate partner for your ODC? And especially, I've been having this doubt in my mind, like, so how did you, because in spite of us being located in one of these tier 2 emerging cities, in comparison to tier 1 cities which have established GCCs though?
Yep. So good. Yeah, in fact, we had qualified you guys against 50s of KPIs and parameters. So it's like a tough job to qualify an offshore development vendor. There are plenty of providers and suppliers around the market. So we have typical parameters like advantages, location advantage, skill sets, stability, methodology, like, average people in bench, recruitment list, and then ramp up time, ramp down time, and the conditions for ramping up and ramping down, engagement models, test periods like POCs provided, metrics, KPIs for the resources who are getting joined, like could be like we could get some, metrics on the resources quality, billing, flexibility in billing, infrastructure, hardware, and like connectivities, VPNs, like those kind of things. And security and compliance was one major factor with the BFSI in place. And all those recruitment standards and your center of excellence and all those scale up growing models. Flexible working hours, and like people are ready to stretch across travel costs, many more things. Like it's kind of flexible, lots of learning curves, mentor coaching, kind of certifications you have in accreditations with you guys. And the main thing is about attritions, getting blended rates. All those things are making a big difference. And the clientele base, which is quite impressive. And you guys had a very good BFSI score with lots of BFSI customers. So it's around 50s of parameters. Mainly, I will tell the one which outscored against all the vendors were mainly the stability of the team, of the group, and then the attrition. And basically, we were impressed by the management, top down to the bottom. In every layer, everybody were deeply engaged and kind of very open with the supplier and vendor relationship. Everything was perfect. In fact, it's like a marriage of two different entities. It's like really good thing which went through. In case like why we picked in terms of tier 2 is mainly because being in tier 2, yes, the skill sets, as long as it's available, it will be a good deal. And traditionally, we were like hunting for Java, J2E, PLSQL, pretty much mostly openly available skill sets, and we didn't have any major drawback in getting those. Yes, and then mainly it's like resources are stable, and attrition is very less in tier 2 city because there are more qualified and experienced resources who come and stay back in a city where it's like relaxing, better, like less traffic and more much better lifestyle. So those kind of things we get. Surprisingly, we get very good resources in tier 2 cities also. But even sometimes there's a missing resource gap. You guys are able to fill it up by getting the best resources outside from the other bench. That's also quite okay with us. So in case like that was not a major drawback in terms of getting it in tier 2. And also the advantage, location advantage, it gave us a price advantage because the blended rates given by you guys were quite attractive compared to. We did this exercise of POC also. You gave us a 3 to 4 months POC to kind of do a exercise on a 3 months goodwill period where we try to prove each other the model works and works good for us. And the blended rate and all these things, you guys outscored against 6 vendors. It's like really amazing to see that. Yeah, so that's the bit which made you guys win that deal in tier 2 city, in spite of being in tier 2 city. Yes, someone here.
Oh, thank you so much, Ravi. That was very much informative, I would say, especially for the audience for today as well. And okay, now quickly moving into the second question from me, right? Yep. So Ravi, what I understand is, look, statistically, I've seen that one of those APAC-based banking GCCs in India, they've managed to deliver about 12,000 plus RPA-based bots over a span of about just 4 years. So it is a banking GCC. And still we hear some of the banking sector entities, right? They're being afraid of afraid of outsourcing their work to offshore. So why do you think so this is? And then what do you reckon are the actions that could help drive away this fear from them, Ravi? Please tell us. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think this is a kind of evolution. Banks have the traditional fear that going into cloud also, like Vineet, and like they know that it's like infrastructure. People are trying to move their system to cloud, and they have this kind of fear. And here for developments, I do think like if you're doing core development of the banking core packages, then they might be fearing about the security compliances. So in this case, we really look into the ISO 27001 compliance and the PCI 3.1 certifications if it's available, and also those kind of if you're not satisfied, we'll come down and do a QSA, we'll come down and do an audit to just ensure that everything is in place. And in fact, as a corporate company, we also have a shared checklist. So we outscore each and every parameters that the security compliances are met, and also we kind of make an NDA with each and every team members signing off telling there's a protection of each and every thing which is done by each team members. So along with the NDA with the company, and also we do the sign off with the individual resources who has been done, who has been engaged with us. So in terms of all those things can remove the security fears and and all those things can be taken care. So I don't think there shouldn't be a big issue for any banks or any BFSI customers to start using dev for in ODC model, because it's kind of established and it's like a place. In case you want a dedicated model, like a dedicated space, that also is available in your case. So in case you want to have a dedicated separated firewall and everything, that's also possible in your case. But a simple 2FA with the VPN should suffice for us for starting as a small POC in terms of resource of 35 to 40. That should be a good enough deal to start with for security concerns. So that's my take on this particular topic.
Oh, thank you once again, Ravi, and it's been very kind of you to join us today, and thank you for shedding your light on these topics today.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah, thank you once again for joining. So yes, we will now move on to the Q&A section. So I believe some of you have managed to post some of your questions in the Q&A slot. Okay, I do see a few questions here. Let's get into them straight away. Okay, the first one is, what are the infra technology capability to be considered for a shared and a dedicated ODC? Vinith, would you like to take this, please?
Yeah, Amir, I think I already explained earlier, like what is shared and what is dedicated. However, let me go a little bit in depth for a minute about what are the capabilities or what is that needs to be considered for shared and dedicated. So when we talk about shared, it is like shared. It is a point. It can be a wireless point or a Ethernet point that is being provided, and the business starts from there. So as Ravi said, VPN, they've been using client-based VPN. So there are two different types of VPN. One is a site-based and one is the other one is a client-based VPN. So it's like client-based VPN, the business starts and everything goes across. With the shared, there is one challenge that I've come across personally in our business is the audits. So sometimes like PCI or HIPAA or PII, they are not comfortable with the shared ones. They actually think that shared is something that they are losing their data. And when we talk about shared, when we have three different types of businesses, let's say PCI, HIPAA, and PII, all three regulatories have three different kind of auditing mechanisms. And the failure rates of non-compliance are much high when we go to a shared one. And it actually gives us a challenge there, saying that, oh, okay, I wanted to harden this. Mine has to be like this. This is what PCI says. HIPAA says, no, I want it to be like this, and this is what it has to be. So if it is a cost-effective, good solution that is needed for immediate thing, I would say it is to start with shared. But when it's a dedicated, it is like a dedicated entire network all the way from the MUX to the router, to the firewall, to the switches, and no interference in between. So we at our campus have it's a blended ODCs that we have. So we have ODCs which have dedicated, that is from the MUX directly going to the router, going to the firewall, going to the shop. The other one is a kind of a dedicated, 90% dedicated, 10% is shared. It is like from the MUX, it comes into our router, from the router, it gets into the firewall, from the firewall, one Ethernet port directly gets into their firewall. So that is like 90% dedicated and 10% shared. That is a cost-effective, the most cost-effective way, or the most cost-effective way. The last one is like shared. One of the best customers that we have is Ravi's team, and it is like they have a very, they use the state-of-the-art VPN connectivity, and they know what a security is, and they control everything out of Singapore. So a kind of all three blends. So investment is high on dedicated, investment is less on shared. Auditing is a big challenge in shared. Auditing has never been a challenge on dedicated. So this is what I would have a comparison when we talk about the technology or the infrastructure.
All right. And given the time, right, we'll just take two more questions. Okay. So I can see the next one is, it's a straightforward one. Would GCC provide 24/7 or global time zone coverage in terms of client support?
You want me?
Yeah,
you
yeah,
want
yes,
me?
Vinod. So you,
Okay.
would you go, please?
Okay. So
Yeah.
yes, when we talk about GCC, it has to be flexible that 24/7 is supported because we have multiple time zones. We have Malaysian time zone, IST, PST, all STs are across. So it has to be 24/7. So any GCC that needs to be planned should operate on 24/7 or should have the feasibility of operating on 24/7. And for 24/7, the challenges are transport, availability of people working in multiple shift, and technology support during non-business hours. Over the last 2 decades, especially last 15 years, we have the state of the art giving like 10 by 10 for all these things: transport, people, mindset to work in different time zones, 24/7, sacrificing Sundays and Saturdays and taking hours on Tuesdays or Wednesdays or working day. So Coimbatore, being a developing city, has really helped and made people mindset that they could actually work on Saturdays and Sundays and take off during the weekdays. The technology is available and the power is available. And KGISL campus by itself, which is like 45-acre campus, is a living campus, has all the facilities, even apartments are available, hostels are available, 24/7 cafeteria, 24/7 power. Power has never been a problem for us because for various kind of power generations that we have in-house, we are also exploring how we could bring a solar plant into the power requirement for us. So it's not only diesel that we are burning out, we are cautious about the nature. So we are closely working on solar powers too.